Hi guys, it's Sophie. So we're in a slightly different corner today. I've slightly moved around the way my library's set up so that my chairs in the corner and my bookshelves are like free. I don't know whether I will film here going forward, whether I might move myself across to film. Because I know people like to see books in the background. But yeah, for today it's going to be in this corner. So normally when I do my wrap-ups I do a fiction one and a non-fiction one, or non-fiction and other, but I actually only read 3 things of fiction this month, so I'm going to try and put them all in one. If it gets too long I will just shut it down in the middle and start up with another video just so it's not overly long, but I'll do my best to try and fit it in one. So the first couple I'm going to go over are the Mabanckou ones, and the first one is the one I've already filmed the review of, and that one is Black Moses by Alain Mabanckou. I'm not going to talk about this one here because there is a full review which I'll link for you. I did enjoy it, but I don't think I enjoyed it as much as other people would. It's kind of my thoughts on a post-it note. The other Mabanckou one that I read in April was The Unseen by Roy Jacobsen. I'm not going to talk about this one, but there isn't a review yet. I'm actually just about to film it as soon as I finish filming this one, but I will talk about this in more detail. I don't want to give any spoilers for that video here. And then the last fictional one I read was this one. It's Rape, a Love Story by Joyce Oates. And I was completely drawn in by the title. I saw someone else had it on their Goodreads and pretty much was just like, I need to know what this is. And this is a very powerful book. Like, it's really triggering. Like, if you are worried about being triggered, like, don't read it. If you're not in a place where you can do that, don't read it. This is, and just warning now in this video, this probably is going to be like a bit triggering now. I'll put a time limit up when I stop talking about this book, so if you want to watch the rest then please do skip ahead. But yes, this book opens with the gang rape of a woman by sort of 6 or 7 men in the middle of the night, and it's about how that crime changes the woman's life, really, and also it's really an exploration of like what rape is beyond the physical violent act, if that makes sense. So it goes into like the feelings that her partner goes through when he's trying to touch her and he knows that he's hurting her and that she's scared of him, and the way that the hospital staff don't want to talk directly about it and refer to these strange internal injuries to her all the time because it seems too delicate, and the court system and the way that the perpetrators' families feel and the way the perpetrators feel, and it's kind of a picture of the whole way in which this is. I found it really hard to read, and that probably means quite a lot of it is fairly accurate, I would feel. Yeah, it was one of those things where I would want to give this book to people who don't get it, or who want to understand a little bit more about it as an experience. There's a quote on the back that says, I think, like, all men should read this book. I don't think all men should read this book, but I think anyone who doesn't really understand the violence of this particular crime should read this. Like, this is an extreme example because of the brutality of the attack, but the points around it stand still. I was really impressed with it. I thought it was going to be handled far worse than it actually was in the end, and this is my first Joyce Oates that I've read, so I may pick up more of her because I think it's quite hard to do this kind of thing and not make it too exploitative, but I don't think it was exploitative. I did try and think about that the whole time I was reading it, but I don't think it was. So yeah, she may be someone else that I pick some stuff up from, because obviously her name's a big name. I just never gravitated to any of her work before. Yeah, so as I say, that's actually all the fiction that I read this month. Everything else has been non-fiction, graphic novels, poetry, all that kind of good stuff. So I'll get into some... Oh, actually no, there's one more fiction, but it's YA. We'll do that one quickly. That one is Encounters by Jason Wallace, and this one I was kindly sent for review by the publishers, who are Anderson Press. And this one isn't out yet. I think it's out relatively soon though. Let me see if I can find a release date. Can't see it, but I'm pretty sure it's out in June or July. Do have a look, I know they have it on their website. Yeah, so this is a YA book about a school of children in, I think, South Africa? No, Zimbabwe. Where basically the children are in a break time and a large number of them say that they've seen aliens. And this is all based on a true story of a school in Zimbabwe where exactly this happened. and this particular book follows an American family to some extent who have gone over, or the period at which this American family have gone over to psychoanalyse the children and find out if they're lying or whether they think they might be telling the truth. And the story is told through a number of different characters. So some of them are the children themselves who have seen aliens, and some of them are like one of them is like the American girl. Some of them are children who haven't seen them but who've been like affected by it. And it's that which was the thing I found really cool about it. But there's a lot more to it than that, which I wasn't really expecting. Like it talks about quite a lot of darker things, and like, without kind of trying to do spoilers, like you try and think about the reasons why children might lie about stuff like that, and it talks about that a bit, and I really wasn't expecting that, but yeah, I thought it was good. And I don't normally read YA, and I don't read an awful lot of YA, but I do really like books about aliens. And whilst I don't read them very much, it's kind of like a guilty pleasure, this kind of hit that for me, and I think it was fun. So yeah, there's that one if you're interested. Okay, and on to some non-fiction. The first one I have is The Rise of the Right by Simon Winlow, Stephen Hall and James Treadwell. And I absolutely love this book. This is going to be one, I think, of my 12 important books for the year. This is a book talking about English nationalism, talking about the EDL specifically, but also diving into UKIP, a little bit of post-Brexit feeling. And it's talking about the split that a lot of the working class have felt from the left, and the reasons why that is, and the reasons why these other nationalist parties are kind of coming up in society at the minute. It is definitely a case of a book where like the left is whipping the left, but I kind of wanted that, and I did actually find it quite interesting to read from. And yeah, it's very good. I think it's very well put together, because the authors do use quotes directly from their sources. They call them their contacts, so these people who are members of EDL, to kind of explain their feeling and why they support the policies they do. But they also have like quite a large quantity of the book is kind of an intellectual kind of dissection, I guess, of society, like in general, and politics in general. And I just thought it was really interesting. I've never read anything by this house before, and apparently there is like a number of other books that like are around the similar kind of issues that they published. I think there's one about like they did one about like masculine identity that looks really interesting, and talking about like the ways in which different factors can kind of erode what was a traditional masculine identity, and how men are building up identity today. And I find that really interesting, because obviously one of the side effects of sort of gender equality is that the behaviours of men and women change. So like it's a two-sided thing. It can't just be the way that people treat women changes. It's automatically going to affect both genders. So I thought that could be quite interesting as well. But yeah, so I really enjoyed this one. Someone asked me on Twitter, because I've been pushing it a lot, because I really did love it, whether it is essential reading essentially for anyone else in the world. The thing is, if you're not British, you're probably not going to get as much out of this as you would, but if you're interested in British politics, then I think it is a must. The next one I have is another political one, and that one is Insane Clown President by Matt Taibbi, or Tabby. I still don't know, I should have looked it up in the time since I picked this one up. But this is basically like a rant about Donald Trump and all the stuff that he did in his election campaign. And it's really funny, it's really depressing, and it's a really, really quick read. If you don't already know kind of the stuff Trump was up to in his election race and all of the kind of ridiculousness of it, this is a good book. If you're a bit like me and you know quite a lot of it, but you just kind of wanted like a bit of a laugh about it, I guess, like as much as you can, it is funny. Yeah, I think this is the kind of thing that didn't really teach me anything, but was every now and again it's nice to just indulge and just like delve into the same views you already hold. And like this was one of those books for me. I read it in like a day and a half, and yeah, I think it is what it is. Like, I don't think you're going to get much more out of it than that. Like, maybe if you are like someone who isn't from like an English speaking country and you don't get as much news from America like directly, maybe this might be interesting. It might teach you something, but I think other than that, we all kind of know like he said some stuff he shouldn't have said, like, and he does some stuff he shouldn't do, and he's not a nice guy, I think most people sort of feel, or at least he says some stuff that isn't sensitive. I think that's the minimum I'm going to give you on Trump. Yeah, so that's that one. I did enjoy it. As I say, it didn't teach me anything new, but I think it was a really nice, like, I think it's a good book. I don't know, it's a good book, it's nothing too serious. The next one I read was another non-fiction one that I was really excited to get to, and that one is The Way of the Strangers, Encounters with the Islamic State by Graeme. And this one I picked up when I was in London, and I was completely drawn to it and just couldn't not read it, so I think I read it pretty much straight away. Yeah, this is a book which humanises to a great extent the Islamic State members. So this is a book in which a journalist is talking to members of the Islamic State, people who do believe in violent jihad, people who are Islamists, and do want to see the spread of Islam across the entire world by force. And these are people who are considered in most countries that they are within to be terrorists. And yeah, some of them are like what I would call like couch surfing jihadis. Like, they are people who are doing a lot of online recruiting, a lot of online writing, and that's not to say that stuff isn't dangerous. I think that stuff's really dangerous, but I think they're the kind of people he had access to. But yeah, it gets into their heads to some extent, and somehow the journalist has managed to find, through this weird kind of sense of him maybe converting to Islam, which he never kind of told them, but that's how they picked it up, has somehow been like told way more about this stuff. Like, he writes a lot about how people always talk about what they imagine these people might think, and he's like, if you go talk to them, they're desperate to tell everyone what they think. Yeah, I've never read anything else around the topic that's like this before, and I think it is a really interesting one to have read. It genuinely, yeah, it's just not like anything else I've read, and I think for the first time when I was reading this, I felt as though I could understand, not agree with, but understand the logical process that someone had gone that led them to such a strange conclusion. Because people tend to think logically and emotionally, but they tend to have like an internal logic that's based on like a flawed ideal, or that I would consider a flawed ideal at least. And I'd never been able to find that route before this book, and I think that showed me how they got there, and to a much greater extent like showed me it's not a case of, it's very easy to say they're evil therefore they do evil things, but that's a dichotomy, like you haven't done anything with your thought process. Yeah, really interesting one, and I really wanted to read more books on the topic as soon as I finished it. I'm glad I didn't, because it probably would have been a bit depressing, but really interesting one, really glad I read it. And then because I was reading a lot about the nationalism stuff, there was another one I wanted that was like a more positive view of nationalism, because I didn't want just to have like criticisms of it, because I know that nationalism as a thing isn't necessarily a negative, whilst a lot of the time we associate it with negative things. Being proud of your own country isn't necessarily a bad thing. So I picked up England, Your England by George Orwell, which is an essay about England and why he loves it and what issues he thinks there are. And I loved this. I thought this was great fun. It's tiny, it's just a tiny little pamphlet. Yeah, he's just chatting about stuff that feels so British. Like, he tries to identify like what is English, and then why should we care, and then who cares and who doesn't care. So he kind of pairs off, I can't remember what he calls it, but he pairs off like the like traditional like militaristic guy with like this like kind of simpering like big-headed like intellectual academic, and says how like these two people are like at loggerheads for like everything for England, and the other people are like, look, I don't even know who the Queen is, I don't even know what her name is, like, and how he thinks both of those people are damaging England and damaging nationalism. And just okay, like, I love Orwell, like, I don't think you can read him and not love him, even if you don't agree with him. I just think he's such a good writer. Like, you can tell how smiley I am. I had a really good time with this. Yeah, and I know he's got a few others. There's 4 other like tiny little ones like this, and I'm really tempted just to get all 4 and read them just because I enjoyed it so much. So yeah, it's just a tiny little one here, but I did think it was fun. Okay, one more before we're going to go on to graphic novels and a little bit of poetry. The next one I had is this one, which is No Two Persons Ever Read the Same Book, quotes on books and reading. And there's not really a named author here. There's a guy inside who says he's kind of collected it, called Bart van Aken. And what this is it is kind of a pairing of quotes on reading with a little bit of a bio about the person who's said the quote, done in nice different fonts. So there's like this one here, like a Jeanette Winterson one. Don't know if you can see it. So hard to tell if things are focused. And then like this one. So it's a very pretty book. Like, I think one of the things I really liked about it is how gorgeous all the pages are, and I kind of wanted to use it for Instagram, and I think it's really Instagram worthy, and I did really like it. I think as a book and as what it is, I really like it, but unfortunately I learned something about it after having read it that has kind of put me off it, and I don't want to say what it is because I don't know that that's my place, but I would say probably don't buy this. Like, it's up to you. Like, if you want to buy this book, buy this book. It's a nice thing, but there are reasons I don't think you should buy this. I don't know if it sounds so mysterious, like I'm trying to hide stuff. I'm not. But yeah, like sometimes there are things that come behind a book itself that make the book itself less good, and I think that's what it is. I'm not going to say any more than that, but yeah, sorry. Okay, and the next one I have is a graphic novel. It's the only graphic novel that I've read in a year, and that one is The Encyclopedia of Early Earth by Isabel Greenberg, and it's lovely and it's wonderful and you should go and buy it. No, genuinely, they're just really beautiful pages, beautiful stories. You really connect with like the characters, and just it's really hard to explain these graphic novels because there's two. There's this one, The Encyclopedia of Early Earth, and 100 Nights of Hearing. And I just think they're brilliant stories. Like, I think that's part of it, is that they're just gorgeous and pretty. But like, I don't know, like it feels like a whole world almost, and I think that's really good because I think quite often graphic novels can feel really transient and tiny and fleeting, and I think they don't. Like, I feel like I could go and understand enough about this world that I feel like I have quite a good picture of it, and that rarely even happens with like full-length books. I think maybe it's because my visual sort of way of thinking about things, not my visual memory, but my visual, I guess my mind's eye. I don't know, I can't see things. When I read, I don't see pictures, I just see the words. So graphic novels can be really helpful because then I do have some pictures. So maybe it's kind of that, but I love it. Yeah, if you haven't read them yet, I know they're a bit expensive, but go and borrow them from your library or something, they're really good. Okay, we are nearly there now, I promise. I've just got 3 more poetry collections to show you and then that's the end. I really liked all of them, spoilers, but the first one is Bluets by Maggie Nelson, and I love this book. So many people have chatted about it already, and rightly so because it's fabulous. I went through this book and underlined stuff, and like, okay, this is going to be like a bit of a rambly thing, you're going to have to deal with it for a second. Every now and again, and I mean every now and again, I mean maybe once in every few years, I will find a book where something about what the author is saying feels like it has been taken from my head, that feels like it is a part of me that I didn't know that anyone else had, and that happens rarely. And I had that feeling reading a lot of this book, and this has like a great personal value for me now because I read this book when I was trying to make a really hard choice and I didn't know what to do, and I felt like I couldn't decide on my own, and I really just wanted a break from thinking about the choice and went and sat down and read this, and I can't quite explain how, but like, this helped me know what I needed to do with myself. It's really valuable. It talks a lot about depression, it talks about a lot about love and loss, and it's poems on the colour blue, but it's so much like, it's so much more than that. I loved it. And there are so many things in here, like I know it's stupid, but like there's so many things in here, like when I read them, like it feels like me. Like I know it sounds stupid, but like number 71, I have been trying for some time now to find a dignity in my loneliness, and I've been finding this hard to do. And 75, mostly I feel myself becoming a servant of sadness, and I'm still looking for some beauty in that. Like there's just, it might not be the same for you because you might not find it the same, but I think it's gorgeous no matter what. The writing is gorgeous and the way that she tells stories is beautiful. But this like connected with me on like a really deep level. Yeah, so there's that one. I don't know how useful that is for you guys because obviously you're not me, but I loved it. There's that. Okay, the next one's going to be less like all over the place. And that one is Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth by Warsan, Shire. Tiny little poetry pamphlet. And it's poems by a Somali author that are talking about kind of life and hardships, and yeah, it's worth reading. Is what I would say. It is incredibly effective as a poetry collection. Some really hard-hitting stuff. Like the very last poem is tiny, but I couldn't get it out of my head, and it's called In Love and in War. And she writes, "To my daughter I will say, when the men come, set yourself on fire." And like that is so tiny, but like I couldn't stop unpacking that. Like I sat there for such a long time, like thinking about what that means, and like the horror of that, and also like the hope in it, and just I think it's gorgeous. There's a bit in this poem called Conversations About Home at the deportation centre, and she's talking about how it feels to escape your country because of war, and she writes, "I hear them say go home, I hear them say fucking immigrants, fucking refugees. Are they really this arrogant? Do they not know that stability is like a lover with a sweet mouth upon your body 1 second? The next you're like a tremor, lying on the floor covered in rubble and old currency waiting for its return. All I can say is, I was once like you. The apathy, the pity, the ungrateful placement, and now my home is the mouth of a shark, now my home is the barrel of a gun. I'll see you on the other side." Yeah, like, it's really, I don't know, I love poetry that's strong and violent. Like, I think poetry is one of the like most shocking art forms that there is, and yeah, this like blew my socks off a little bit. I sat down and read it in one go, and then I think I read it straight again. Yeah, really good, really good. And then the very last one I have to talk about today, I know it's been a long video, is Selected Poems by Frank O'Hara. And this is a huge collection of his poetry through, in chronological order, through the beginning of him writing to the end of his productive writing life before his death. And I very much enjoyed the activity of going through this man's life with him. He writes beautifully, and he has quite a simple style that I quite like. Like, okay, I'm going to read you a poem because I feel like with poetry it's easier just to read them than it is to try and explain them. So here's a little tiny one that I really liked. It's called Again, John Keats, or On the Pot of Basil. Just when I was getting completely through, dried up, balled up, anxious and empty, like a gulch in a John Hudson movie, I went to see Strange Interlude and began to go away for a weekend on the beach. Into that theatre again and again. Now I have a pot of basil a friend gave me, and I'm reading Keats again, and realise that everything is impossible in a different way. Well, so what? But there's a difference between the windows and the walls again. Like, there's something really intimate and small about what he writes. Like, okay, so like there's another little tiny bit here that is the beginning of a poem called Essay on Style, and just has that closeness again. So it says, someone else's camera is sitting on the table, the black kitchen table. I am painting the floor yellow. Bill is painting it. Wouldn't you know my mother would call up and complain? Like, it's just these kind of tiny, close things. And also, like, he writes a lot about love and yeah, and also, like, because of the timing, he writes quite a lot about war and about everyone who's going off to fight in the war, and people who come home and who doesn't come home, and how that feels. And he loses people and loses friends, and he writes about that, and about what he writes, kind of these letters, these odes, like, always to them. And yeah, it was a really nice experience. I read it over a period of a few days, and it really made me want to do it more, like to find more huge selected poems of and go through them. But I have to try and find someone I really like first. I could do it with Sylvia Plath, that's the person I thought I might have done it with next. But it's a really different experience to reading just one collection, and I just found it really fulfilling. So yeah, I would recommend it. If you've never heard of Frank O'Hara before, he does have like shorter books, obviously, like single collections rather than the whole selected poems, if you wanted to give him a try. So those are all the books that I've read in the month of April. It's now May. I'm glad May's here. May is good. But yeah, so a fair few things, not much fiction. There should be a bit more fiction in the next month, I expect. And I think, like, going over it, I actually had a much better reading month than I thought I did, because I actually enjoyed quite a lot of what I read this month. Yeah, so do let me know if any of the things I've mentioned sound interesting to you. You're going to pick any of them up. If you have already read them and you like them or didn't like them, then always let me know in the comments down below. Yeah, hopefully you guys are looking forward to May, and to a little bit more spring and then some summer. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon in my next video. Bye bye.